So, on a day like today, it's easy to dwell on what was lost 80-some years ago this month, but I like to remember what the Terminal Islanders had, how lucky they felt to have known each other, and how fondly they remember their times together on Terminal Island. They have very strong childhood memories, which you'll see in the documentary, and it's great to reminisce with them about those memories. They refused to let their community die even after having their homes taken away, being forcibly separated from their family. Today I remember how lucky I was to have met everyone in this documentary and to share in this Terminal Island spirit that lives on. Please enjoy the Lost Village of Terminal Island.
It's been a while, but it was so moving, wasn't it? So I wanted to introduce our panel, and I also want to get some feedback from them about what they thought of the documentary. You could get their full, I'm not going to read their whole bio. Everyone received a program, you could read their extensive bios here, but I'm going to just briefly introduce them. So closest to me in her matching Terminal Island happy coat is June Miyamoto Donovan, and she's president of the Terminal Islanders Club. Her Wakayama grandfather, Inosuke, and her father, Arthur Ichiro Donovan, went from San Diego to Terminal Island to fish. So we're looking forward to hearing more about the club. Of course, we all met David already, the director of the Terminal Islander documentary. And this is the only film that he's ever made. So we'll have to find out more why. But he is involved in community advocacy in Culver City. And to my far right is Michael Enomoto, and most of you are probably very familiar with him. He was the architect of that Terminal Island Memorial that we saw in the documentary. How many people have gone to visit there? Can you raise your hand? Oh, that's good. That's wonderful that you've actually seen the monument. And he is the managing partner of Gruen Associates. And they're the ones who did the Budokan in Little Tokyo. So thank you very much, Michael, for doing that. We were recently there for Alanisho's memorial service. And so Michael, just like June, has Terminal Islander roots. His mother is Kei Ryono. And if you're a Terminal Islander, you know that Ryono name is very esteemed. And his grandfather was Chiyomatsu. So he was a very successful fisherman. But before I go further, if you are connected to anyone who was interviewed in this documentary, can you stand up? Don't be shy. Come on. Okay, keep standing, keep standing. say to a Terminal Islander, maybe who was it? Maybe you saw him briefly here in the movie, but please stand up. If you're connected to a Terminal Islander, please stand up. Wow! It's really great, and I see some familiar faces here. It was really beautiful just to see Charlie Hamasaki and Miss Taki and Yukio Tatsumi, Kanshi Yamashita, his relative is my girlfriend who's in the audience here, and Minto Nai. So many beloved leaders, and again, David, thank you so much for documenting them. So briefly, to just start off, June and Michael, any thoughts of seeing this documentary right now?
I've seen
Oh.
So I've seen it many times, but each time it does bring back, and all the good memories that they talk about is what I've always heard from my father and his friends, and so I think it's really nice, and that's why I am president now, is to keep that legacy going, to keep that fire burning, like you said.
How about you, Michael?
Well, what I really remember about the memorial and what I saw.
Pretend you're doing karaoke.
I don't do that. What really struck me about the film today was seeing the nets, and when you go out to the memorial, see that we really spend a lot of time talking about the network that was done at Terminal Island, and the statues have the nets that we saw in the film. The other thing that struck me about this particular film was Charlie, because he would attend our meetings, and it was a real ride. But he really contributed a lot to the whole impact of the memorial. So I was really happy to see him again.
Okay, Jim, let's go back to you. So tell us about the Terminal Islanders Club. We heard a little bit how it started, but maybe how you got involved and how the club has progressed over time.
So yeah, like I said, my father was a Terminal Islander, and Mr. Tatsumi, they were really close friends, and Mr. Tatsumi was ready to retire. He was president for 27 years. Only the second president of the Terminal Island Club. And so my dad's like, you have to go to this meeting. So I go, and then all of a sudden they're like, we nominate June to be secretary. I'm like, okay, where'd that come from? So I did accept, because they are getting older and they needed people to keep it going. And then Min Tonai was president, and then he, after he was ready to retire after a couple of years, I took over as president, because it did become important to keep their legacy going, and to watch Mr. Tatsumi and my dad throughout the years that I was growing up. We always went to the picnics, and so I said, yeah, we need to keep that going, and so we brought in some younger people to try and get that, and we need to keep it going. We don't want it to end with just us. So hopefully our children and even just friends, family, because there's never going to be any Terminal Islanders anymore. It's just who were left down. And I know in the audience there are a few of the Terminal Islanders residents here today, so which is.
I didn't ask that question, huh?
Yes.
Who in this audience, and you could raise your hand, lived on Terminal Island before World War II? Oh, wow. You know some of their names?
Yes, I know that Joe Zaki is here. Takako Kataoka is here. I didn't see some of the.
Here, I don't know your name.
Patty Nishi,
Oh,
Mike Ishikawa.
Ishikawa. Yeah, my eyesight's not good, but I know I've seen some. So, yeah, there's quite.
So what keeps you all together, after all these years? I mean, you could identify yourself as a Wakayama person or this or that, but why Terminal Island?
Because it was a family, everybody was a family to each other. And even we still hold we still hold the New Year's party in January. And we hold the picnics in June. It's just so that they can come together, the original and their families. And it's a way that we all talk to each other. And even though we weren't there, we hear the stories from them still. And we connect that way.
And how do you pass your stories along? I mean, part of it is you're still kind of learning too, June, right? About your personal, your family's connections, but how do you pass this along to the next generation?
Yeah, that's the hard part, is that just keeping it. Because even a lot of my friends, I didn't even know that their parents were from Terminal Island. They didn't really talk about it. You just thought, oh yeah, I was born in Terminal Island, and you just think, oh, like I was born in Long Beach. You just think it's a city. Nobody knows that it went away after the war. So a lot of my friends that, I knew the parents, but I didn't know that was their father, and because they didn't come. So now, but a lot of them now are realizing that they didn't know this fact. And so we just want to, the more people talk about it, the more they hear about it.
So I know, people don't know that actually Terminal Island is part of the city of Los Angeles. It's part of the port of Los Angeles. So in what ways has the Terminal Islanders worked with the city or maybe nearby San Pedro, the state? Can you tell us if there's any cooperative activity?
Yeah, well, we're trying now with the city of San Pedro. I know they're trying to, there's a few buildings like the store and restaurant. There's a couple buildings that they want to try and keep them and get them designated as, monuments or, memorials. So I know the city of San Pedro, they're working on it, so we're trying to keep in touch with them. The Los Angeles Maritime Museum in San Pedro, that's where they used to catch the ferry to go to San Pedro. There's a museum there, and they actually have a exhibit on Terminal Island there, which is really nice. And they had it there, and they're going to keep it there for as long as they can.
Yeah, I helped work on that actually, and it was a result. So I'll do some commercials. One is the Angel City Press, they put together this book through Geraldine Nance, who was the head of the port at that time, Terminal Island, and it's being reissued, and all the paperbacks went, so now we have a hardcover that's just being reissued. It's coming out in March, but you can get one now, and it covers a lot of the material that David had in his documentary.
Yes, we're very happy that they came back out because they were harder to find now.
Well, so what if someone wants to join the Terminal Islanders? I mean, do you have to be a Terminal Islander to join?
No, you don't, and that's what we have now. And even some of our board members now are not Terminal Islanders. They don't have family. They're not connected in any way, but they just want to help us keep that legacy going. We had hoppy posts made again, so that, and our current board, we like to ondo dance, so we would see each other, but we didn't really connect it. But once we had our hockey coats, we all decided we would go to ondo bon, so it looks like we have a really big group, and so, which is nice. And so people will say, what's a Terminal Islander? You're just at a church, so then we get to tell them what Terminal Island is and what it was about, so that people will get to know what that is.
Thank you so much, June. So David, the thing that hit me, besides all these elders, their images and their voices being recorded, was all the footage. I loved, it was wonderful to see the fishing and, it's kind of like at the Japanese American National Museum, they have the footage from certain camps and it's in full color, and that was really wonderful. So before I ask you these set questions, on a personal note, how did you get that footage?
Well, that color footage is actually from a relative. I'm not tall enough for this microphone. It's all from a relative of Rob Fukuzaki who narrated the film. So I think it was his uncle, was well known and very famous and one of the best fishermen. And I heard that other fishermen would kind of watch him and wait for when he would go out. And as soon as they saw him go, they'd be like, all right, it's time to go fish. And they'd follow him. And so he had color footage because he was doing very well and had a color camera. And so almost all of that.
That really added to that whole experience. Okay, David, why did you make this film? I mean, are you related to a Terminal Islander?
I am not.
Okay, so why did you make this film?
Well, I grew up in Cyprus, which is not too far away, and I was working at UCLA, and we came across Terminal Island as a community, and I was just shocked that I had never heard about Terminal Island in my entire childhood, and it surprised me that such a historical event happened right down the road, and that so many people were affected right down the road, and it was an important story that I was unhappy that I didn't know about. And then I found out that there was this club and people were still meeting, and then it just became, and then I met the Terminal Islanders, and I was like, well, once you meet Charlie Hamasaki, you're like, okay, I think there's a film here. And the spirit of everybody who we got to speak with was really amazing.
And it looks like, I was watching you as all these people were streaming in and they were greeting you. I mean, have you been able to keep in touch with the families since you originally made the film?
You know, we used to go to the picnics and the New Year's parties every year, and then we had a daughter and we had COVID, and so we've missed the last few, but I do miss it and I want to come back to the next one that's coming up in June. Yeah, so, and I, like I said, Kristen Okamoto was right here, who came from San Jose, and I was planning to talk about Tommy because he was the first person that we interviewed, and then she just showed up. So it was great to see her.
Well, that's quite a testament to what you've documented. So we know people that are Terminal Islanders love the film, but how about, have you had a chance to show the film to people who have no connection to Terminal Islanders? And when you do, what are the kind of responses you've received?
Yeah, I mean, it was shown at Loyola Marymount University. It was shown at some schools around town. I mean, everyone is shocked and surprised that this happened, number one.
What part of it?
Well, the people were evacuated in 48 hours.
Okay, so specifically the Terminal Islander removal.
Yeah, well, and the experience is unlike maybe any other Japanese group, because the night of Pearl Harbor, many of the men and the elders were taken the very next day. And then over a period of time, many more were gone until February, when there was really no one over 18 who was male left. And that experience is also very unique. You know, different generations have different ways of feeling. People always feel like, oh, well, I wouldn't let that happen to me, or, you know, young people. But, you know, I think when you see the film, you're like, well, what could I do if the entire country is?
Is that what you kind of intended for the audience to get from your documentary? Or what's your objective? I
mean, my intention was just to let the Terminal Islanders speak for themselves. Like, I didn't have an agenda on what I wanted that to mean. I wanted them to be able to express themselves and share their own enthusiasm with the place that they grew up.
So you're in community advocacy now. I mean, I'm sad that you're not making any films, because I think films can play a role in advocacy. So why not more films, or how have you been changed through making of this documentary?
Yeah, well, part of the thing that attracts attracted me to Terminal Island is the strength of the community, and that is an inspiration in pretty much everything that I do now in community advocacy. The power of individuals to change the course of a community is what really I found very interesting about this. So in the government, just a few people decided that it was time to evacuate Terminal Island, and that policy and that decision that was made without really knowing the people that were involved. And then on the flip side of that, everyone who is an individual who decides that this is something worth keeping. So in 1971, when they decided, let's build a club, and they essentially saved Terminal Island from being forgotten by bringing everyone back together. And then now June is here to continue that on. And it's just a few people who make a few decisions can really change the course of things. And then we have a monument that Michael has made that's here forever.
Thank you. So Michael, I mean, your reputation is well established, but how did you get involved in the project? And for those of you, I mean, we saw bits of it, and I love your monument, by the way. It's just, it's so organic to the location, which I really appreciate. And I bet some people, although a lot of people raise their hands, I bet some people don't know where it is. So can you also give us kind of a description of the monument and the significance of where it's located?
Okay, well, let's see. Let's start with how I got involved. So one day I got a phone call from my Uncle Bob. And when you get a phone call from your Uncle Bob, you answer it and you do whatever he asks you to do. And so he wanted me to work on this monument that they had an idea for. And they actually had some original designs, other designs for this monument by other architects. Ted Tanaka had a design for it as well. Ted's was very, very, very geometric, had pyramids and squares and things like that. But after I talked to the committee, Min and Yukio and my Uncle Bob, and after I talked to them, what I started to realize, they really wanted something that meant something to them. They weren't so much interested in art, or even architecture for that matter, but they were interested in preserving their memories. And so we really wanted to do that, to preserve the memories for forever. So the next thing that happened, and this was the big shocking thing, was they showed me the location for the memorial. And by the way, I should, acknowledge Grace Napolitano, who really worked hard to get money from the government to help fund the memorial. I don't want her to be forgotten. But when they took me to where the location was, what I found out it was not where Terminal Islanders were living. It was actually across the harbor from it. And so it's like, well, we're not at Terminal Island, we're kind of like away from it. And they said, well, but this is what the Port of LA is going to give us. So this is where the memorial has to be. And so this location really drove a lot of what you see today at the memorial. You might wonder why there's two people at the statue. One is you see him looking back at the Terminal Island where the barracks are. And the other one with a net is greeting you. But we really wanted to create something that had you look back at Terminal Islanders, and so you could kind of remember. And so we thought about the idea of a bridge back to the past. And so that kind of drove the basic design. That and the fact that you had to kind of look back at some place because you weren't there. Like the Manzanar Memorial is at Manzanar. This is kind of looking across the water at where you used to live. And so we really wanted to have something that would help them remember what it was all about. So there were two basic elements One was the Torii Gate, which is an exact replica of the Torii at the Shinto shrine that you got to see in the movie today. The other thing is, Yukio and Min had a whole bunch of pictures, lots of pictures, and we had them reproduced, and when you go to the memorial, you'll see we chose, I think it was about 10 or 15 pictures to be displayed on the memorial, engraved on the granite there. And they're there for everybody to see. And it's a story of the life on Terminal Island and what it was like. And it's, to me, I think that what really touched me when it first opened up, when we had the grand opening, was the people would walk up to the pictures and they would actually touch them. It's really something. That made it worth it.
Was there a little bit of back and forth when you were working with the committee on what to do?
There was not a lot of back and forth per se. I had to do a lot of explaining to them what the meaning of this and that were. The creation of the statue, because they thought they were going to have a one person, but we proposed two. So one was looking back across the harbor, one was greeting you and pulling the nets. And there was a lot of discussion about that. Henry Alvarez, the sculptor, the late Henry Alvarez, unfortunately, did a great job of creating those statues. And they're almost exactly what we had originally contemplated for those statues. It's amazing. When you look at the small model, you can see that they're virtually the same.
Were there any models for those fishermen?
Yes, there were. You want the story about that?
I love the story. They look so natural, that's why.
Well, here's a little history of the statues. So Craig Beachy, who was our designer, went to the Allied train store in Culver City, over there on Sepulveda, and he bought a model train people, and there were these little model guys from the model train, and one was pushing a broom, and one was just squatting like the person that you see in the statue. And what Craig did, in order to make it as realistic as possible, he took the legs of the statues, the little model statues, and he actually cut them and made the legs shorter. So it could be more Japanese. And Henry Alvarez, the sculptor, followed that, and you could see that the proportions are actually perfect as far as I'm concerned. And the statue to me is really, really great because it helps you look back to where Terminal Island really was, and you could really see. The other thing is you can see that there's a photograph that Yukio brought to us, and the photograph was basically taken from the same location. So we put that on a piece of glass, and when you look through it, you can see the Terminal Island as it was back in the 1930s. It's really a great photo, and I'm really happy that that's still there. I was really saddened, quite frankly, that I heard that some of the plaques were taken last couple of weeks ago.
No, it was wrong.
Yeah, can you, June, tell us?
Yeah, I did get a message in the middle of the night too, and they said, it was damaged, it was stolen. So one of our board members went out the next day to make sure and everything was okay.
good.
So it was wrong, yeah, it was an error.
But it was another monument, right?
Yeah, it was the fishing monument that's in San Pedro.
On Gaffey Street?
On Gaffey, right, that's the one that was stolen.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's been happening.
Yeah, I got it in ours. I was surprised. I was really saddened by that.
Well, did anyone want to say anything before we open it up to Q&As? Anybody on the panel? Okay, any questions? Or It'd be better for questions than comments, but if you have a really tiny comment, that's fine too. And we have a microphone that we would like you to use. So please raise your hand. And don't be Japanese. Be more like a terminal islander, okay? Wait, before we get to the, I'm going to teach. Do you all understand the Mira, Yura? You all get it, right? For those who don't, in Japanese, ra is like a plural. So that's why it's Mira, is, and Yura. Yura is you folks, that type of thing. Okay, yes. And can you, Corey, can you please tell us your name?
Oh, my name is Corey Shiozaki, and this film, was it made or released in 2007, David, or is it later?
Yeah, it was, and there was another version that didn't have Rob Fukuzaki narrating it prior.
I just want to make the comment, it's a wonderful, I'm a filmmaker myself, and very vested in the Terminal Island story. The film I did was Manzanar Fishing Club, that was shown here on the DOR. And the story of Terminal Island was very important to me because I was unable to get some of that wonderful footage that you got from Rob. I had scrounged around. Luckily, I got to meet Yukio and Charlie Hamasaki and Lin Tonai, and through Terminal Islanders was only 400 strong when I discovered them. So, June, I do want to join your organization. This film is amazing, and the good thing about documentaries, they're timeless, they're ageless. You can show a film that you made back in 2007, for the rest of perpetuity. And I just want to thank you for, this opportunity to be here and see a film that I didn't even know that existed. I saw a film that was done by Rob Fukuzaki, but it didn't have the details that you have, and you focus just on the Terminal Islander group. And I just want to thank you again for such a great job you did on the film.
And the DVDs are available for purchase back there too. Did you want to comment back?
The film is stored at Janum, so the colored film, that the original 1930s film that was from the Fukuzakis, and it was a negotiation to get it. So it helped to have Rob Fukuzaki.
Another question. Yes. And please tell us your name.
Oh, hi. I'm Mike Ishikawa. I was born on Terminal Island in 1937.
You look too young.
I'm 86 years old now. Anyway, the only memories of Terminal Island was walking down the little narrow streets, and everybody tells me that I always had a hammer and nail in my pocket, hammering things around. I guess that's the reason I became an architect. Anyway, I remember it as a very homogeneous society. And soon as the war happened and we spread everybody apart, everybody became just another person. There was no homogeneity to the society at all. Everybody became an individual, and the individual life became very hard. The Issei's just had a really tough life. I mean, they became gardeners, they became, the menial jobs, everywhere. And that's what they did, to survive and keep their families going. My parents went to Idaho, became farmers, sharecropper farmers. It was a real tough life. Farming 365 days a year, no rest. And eventually we found our way back to California, and we found a life. But let me tell you, being an Issei in those days, it was tough. And we should applaud them for the life we have today, because they made a tremendous amount of sacrifice for us.
I'll make a quick comment. What I learned from working on the Terminal Island book. One was, I kind of realized that fishing was dangerous, but it's in fact, I think, the most dangerous occupation out there. So that knowledge was very informative to me. And another thing I noticed when you look at the Issei times, that they were very strategic. they hired like American college-educated representatives to lobby for them in Sacramento every year because the state wanted to shut down Japanese fishing. It was okay if you're Italian, it was okay if you're Eastern European immigrant, but they didn't want the Japanese to keep fishing. So the terminal, the Issei, they sent out representatives to advocate for them every year. So that was, because I love the congenial part of the Terminal Islanders, but behind it, I think, was these very smart, intelligent people that knew that for their survival, they had to get political, which was interesting. Okay, any other questions, comments?
Hi, I'm Walter Okitsu. I'm trying to get the history of my grandparents and my aunt. They lived in Imperial Valley, but there's photos of them on Terminal Island. So I'm trying to find information about, apparently they're seasonal workers. Would there be a description of that in the book? How can I get this kind of history? Because there's nobody left who I can talk to.
We didn't put that much that's really fascinating about the seasonal workers. I don't know too much about it, but have you talked to Kim Asiman of Imperial? He heads up the Pioneer Museum in Imperial Valley. Have you talked to him?
No, but I
Maybe,
I will.
yeah, maybe touch base with him, and he's very connected with people in Southern California. Maybe, in this case, two heads are better than one, and they could maybe help trace that. And then the name is Okitsu, and they never stayed long-term. It was just and did they stay in Fish Harbor?
There's a photo of them in that village.
Okay, yeah, Jeannie Wakatsuki Houston, who wrote Farewell to Manzanar, her family was also on Terminal Island, and I don't know how long they were there as well, but yeah. Jim, have you heard anything?
No, I don't think I ever heard that there were seasonal workers there. That's the first.
It could have been, they had a friend and that said, hey, come over and work. So it could have been a very individualized type thing. But interesting. Yes. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Dick has one.
Yeah.
Your name?
My name is Hideki Obayashi, although my buddies in Seattle still call me Dickie. I just want to say one big bonsai! Buddha! The other thing, our family grew up right here in Gardena, not too far from right here in Corrado Ranch, where there were about a dozen future to be great farmers. My grandparents were one of them, the Muratas, related to the Kitas. Also Ron and George Meal, who knew them, and we used to go out on the boat to Catalina Island to hunt for abalones. But I remember in El Monte, where we moved from Corrado Ranch and had to move out of there to matriculate to Utah by truck and cars. And I remember when we came back to the farm, there would be the fishermen in a truck with weigh scales, and that's where we would buy our tofu and sashimi. And I think the guy's name was Babamoto or Baba, something like that.
Yep.
So that was my first initiation to and knowledge of the Terminal Islanders. And then later on, my good friend Aiko and her friend used to write letters from, I think, Terminal Islands to the soldiers. I'm getting old, I can't remember things too well now because I'm 83, believe it or not. But I really like your film, and I like to shout out what we used to do at weddings and before the war. I don't know if it's correct to say that, but I want to shout out a big banzai! 3 times! Banzai! Banzai! Banzai to all you da! Thank you.
Hideki, you were yelling in the supplement's ear. Okay, I think you were talking about Mary Yuri Kochiyama.
Right.
Whose roots were actually in San Pedro, not necessarily Terminal Island, but actually the executive director, Allison, is part of that Kochiyama family. Allison, where are you? Did you want to say anything?
Yes.
No. Okay. But yeah, we did mention Yuri in the book because it's adjacent, you know, very related. Yes, other questions?
My name is Eileen. I wanted to thank the panel. It's very enlightening. But I was also very interested in the film. And you said it was available for purchase?
Yeah, it's on DVD, so we don't sell DVD players, but we have DVD.
Okay, so is that the version that we saw today?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. I have a friend who is a passionate educator in Palos Verdes, and she's actually taking her students to Terminal Island, to the monument as a field trip. So I was just texting her, but she wanted to know about a speaker for her class. I didn't know if anyone is available or if you can help me point her in the right direction. Maybe I can talk to you afterwards.
Yeah. I can come out, or, you know, unfortunately, a lot of the Terminal Islanders that we have, they don't like to go out and speak. And they don't want to, so, I mean, I would be more than happy to come out and.
Well, how about this one gentleman? What was your name? Ishikawa or Mr. Ishikawa? Huh?
Ishikawa, yeah.
Are you available to speak?
What?
To a group in Palos Verdes. About, well, anyway, we'll catch you later. Does the Terminal Islanders have a table back there? Or?
No, we don't.
So
No.
where will you be after this program?
I'll be walking around.
Well, look for it now.
Yeah,
Look for
so
her.
look for me. We can set something up.
Okay, there's someone pointing. Is there a question or comment?
Yeah, my name is Ron Gonzalez. I've been writing recently about Mexican-American baseball in the San Pedro and Terminal Island area, and I'm a former cannery worker. When I grew up in Pedro, there were Mexican families who had lived on Terminal Island. I came across teams like the Terminal Island Toltecs. So the picture that I get is outside of the Japanese village was a very multicultural environment. Can you talk about that and what you found there? And how do people get along?
Well, the people that I spoke to were all Japanese American. So I don't know a lot about anybody else there, but I do know that the fishing trade in general was a very immigrant-heavy trade. And so there's a lot of different ethnicities, and then there were a lot of people who were on San Pedro who were doing that kind of thing. I don't know that there were that many people who were living actually on the island at the time that the Terminal Islanders in this documentary were. They would speak about the people who were not Japanese, because they'd be like, oh yeah, so-and-so who lived at this house, who was Russian or something like that. They would remember those folks, but I don't know that it was a large population until after World War II, in which case, they lost all of their fishing boats, their fishing nets, and other immigrants sort of took over the fishing trade during World War II.
I could speak to that a little bit, because there were two places. There was Fish Harbor, and most people here are connected to that Fish Harbor, where 3,000 people were in very tight housing. And then there was another community that was more like Terminal. It was Warren Furutani, who is a politician and represented this community. his family, they were outside of Fish Harbor. And I think his father owned a gas station. Do you guys remember this? Does anyone have any recollection? So Warren had shared that he felt his parents had a kind of a different experience than this very homogeneous terminal island. So there was another community that was more mixed that you're talking about. And in our book, we have some photos from Warren Furutani's collection, and you could see that multi-ethnic kind of group of people. So it did exist. I don't think people know about it as much as Fish Harbor. Yeah. Oh, Ishikawa again. Is there anyone else who has a? Okay, let's take one over there, and then we'll go to Mr. Ishikawa. Yes, back there. Is there someone?
Hi, I wanted to ask you if any of Charlie's families here, Charlie Hamasaki? Because my mom, she's 95, she was from there, and she can't see very well because she's cataracts, but she heard the beginning and recognized the voice right away. And I recognize him only because on our 25th anniversary, he emceed it, and he's hysterical. Is there any part of his family here? Because she wants to
Yes.
reconnect.
Yes. Where's Charlie Hamasaki?
It's Shizuko Ishii of the Ishii family. You know, Frank Ishii, he had a big giant boat and went fishing all the time. And the funny story I ever heard from my grandfather is he was a fisherman outside of Terminal Island, and the first time he went out, he got kind of greedy because he filled his boat with so much tuna that the thing literally sunk. Called the Coast Guard. And what happened the second time, Mom? I know that it was the third time he's like, this is over, I've got to stay on land, and that's when he became the market fisherman. But luckily, he left Terminal Island with 7 families because he had a feeling something bad was going to happen. So when those signs came up, they were already gone, and they went to Ogden, Utah. And he saw some land, and he said, hey, what are you doing with this land? You have 50 acres. And he said, nothing. And he says, I will farm it for you, and I'll just take a percentage of it. So he brought the families in, and they literally lived in the barn there and farmed the land. They had no idea what they were doing or farming, but they farmed for this guy that my uncle's still in touch with, but he's passed. But it's really amazing because I took her to that statue monument that you have, that you built. Thank you so much. And we couldn't figure out why it wasn't anywhere near Barracuda Street. And she couldn't either, and I couldn't explain it. So that was my first kind of touch with reality when we went there. And anyway, I don't know, I'm talking so much, but my mom, I have a gift of having my mom at 95, and my dad was actually Manzanar too. He couldn't get out fast enough, and he was there. And I had to do a report for college, but he would never talk about it. So I had to do that report on Manzanar without his knowledge and interview. So those people, if you're related to those people that did that and carried on the legacy of Terminal Island, that's really amazing.
So you all have to take a photo together, okay, with Charlie's son. One thing I want to say about Charlie Hamasaki is he participated on the redress and reparations, the commission hearings back in what was it, 1981 and 1980s. Huh?
88, I think.
Yeah, not the hearing. No, before.
No, it was the actual hearings. And Charlie and the national, well, it was with the National Coalition, it was called National Coalition of Redress and Reparations back then. And they, in conjunction with Visual Communications, actually took footage of the hearings. And you hear this impassioned, I mean, we saw one kind of Charlie Hamasaki in this documentary, the warm and, happy and funny one. But this dragon, this other Charlie Hamasaki, came out blazing in the commission hearings. And I believe you could just Google Charlie Hamasaki commission hearings, and it should probably come up, and his testimony is very moving. Charlie was interesting because even though he speaks like a Nisei, he's an Issei, right? He was born in Japan. I don't know, it's just some crazy thing. So he was one of the fishermen who was picked up, like with all the others, and he was sent. Where was he sent again? Where was the first place he was? Do you remember? Huh?
Bismarck.
Yeah, Terminal Islander, goes to Bismarck, North Dakota. He doesn't have anything warm to wear. No, seriously, that's crazy. So how are we doing on time? Is anybody else have any kind of burning question? Oh, yes. Back there. Oh, and then Mr. Ishikawa, I forgot about you. Do you want to say something?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Let's get the microphone for Mr. Ishikawa. I'm sorry, I skipped over him. And then I'll go over to you, right? I just feel bad because he's an actual OG Terminal Islander, so he needs to speak. So let's give him.
Hi. My father was actually one of the fishermen on Terminal Island. My mother was a cannery worker. And I just wanted to say that about 15, 20 years ago, they had a fantastic exhibit of Terminal Island at the Japanese American Museum. And my grandfather was also a fisherman. And going through his stuff after he passed away, I found this fantastic wooden box that he had made. And it had all his fishing equipment in there. And so we donated that to the Japanese American Museum, and that became kind of like the centerpiece of that Terminal Island exhibit. And so if you were able to see that exhibit, it was fantastic. It was well put together. And I wish they would put it together again because it's well worth seeing again.
Thank you. So back to the other gentleman.
Hi, my name is Tetsato, and it said that the Terminal Island housing, the land was I guess owned and built by the cannery. Were the fishing fleet privately owned? And if so, was there any redress or compensation for the loss of their fleet, or their boats?
They were their own boats, from what I understand. I don't know about any.
My understanding was that they were allowed to own 49% of the boat. So that's why they had to sell it for pennies on the dollar when they were kicked out. What was the rest of the question?
Any compensation?
I don't know the history of it. They did get like a very small, insignificant amount prior to the redress. So it was the $20,000 that happened later for people who were interned, but there was like some crazy insignificant amount, I think, for before that. Yeah.
Michael, any stories you've heard?
No, I think our grandfather had his boat moved to Mexico, and by a friend who kept it there during the war. And the boat, the Patriotic was returned after the war, and they used it after the war. But it wasn't kept here, it was moved south. Is that right, Tom?
Something along those lines, yeah. I think one of the crew members that was not Japanese just basically took the boat and promised to give it back after the war, and luckily the family was able to get the boat back.
Those stories sound very familiar, like with the farming story. There were sometimes very loyal workers, who are non-Japanese, who, not in all cases, but in some cases, there were people who were protected. And the whole agreement of the fishermen and the canneries kind of reminds me of tenant farm, or share property, you own some, but the company owns it as well, a certain share. So, but yeah, the boats were compensated. They were confiscated. Okay. Yes, our assemblyman, Al Muratsuchi.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank David once again for making this wonderful film. You know, I am familiar with the history of Terminal Islanders, you know, being removed and incarcerated, but I wasn't familiar with this history of the California legislature. It sounds like the California legislature passed a law to prohibit only Japanese commercial fishing?
They were attempting to.
Okay.
They were not successful.
Oh, okay.
But the Terminal Islanders funded lobbyists to, you know.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I just wanted to not only thank David, but the Terminal Island Club for keeping this this community, this history alive. You know, I represent Torrance and Gardena, and just last year with the redistricting, I started to represent half of San Pedro. I don't represent Terminal Island, but you know, as the only Japanese American in the California legislature now, hopefully there'll be more going forward. But anything I could do to, you know, help keep that history alive, and especially if there's like specific things like this attempted legislation to ban Japanese American commercial fishing that comes out of this Terminal Island history, I would love to work with anyone to, you know, rectify any historical wrongs that have been committed by the state of California.
During World War II, Assemblyman Muratsuchi, they did ban, you know, and I think David's documentary did address that, but actually a Terminal Island Islander, he fought it, and it went to the Supreme Court, and it was reversed. And that was and that's in Bamboo People, the Frank Schumann, the attorney, his book, it talks about that. Stephanie, how are we doing here? Should we wrap it up, or what? You tell me, you're the boss.
5 more minutes.
Okay, 5 more minutes. Oh, and I found it in, you know, I have a lot of senior moments. So I'm looking at my book. What did I write like 7 years ago? So the fisherman was Torao Takahashi. And that was his name. And then he had been fishing since 1914. Oh, and it was the Fish and Game Commission, you know. So in 1947, he filed a lawsuit against them because they refused to issue him a license. So the case eventually went to the U.S. Supreme Court, which is amazing. And it reversed a California Supreme Court decision that earlier upheld the Fish and Game Commission exclusionary amendment. So these Terminal Islanders, you guys are fighters, man. I mean, you like to party, but you fight too. Okay, yes.
I just...
can I have your name, please?
Kay Oda, with my wife Kyoko, and we're part of the World War II wall monument. And we want to, if you're not aware of it, we're putting a monument thanks to Elmer Chuchi, who funded this with the California Assembly for $5 million. So we want to thank Al very much for making this possible. We're in the midst of putting 120,000 plus names of all the carceries, including the Terminal Islands, at Columbia Park, 190th and Prairie. So if you want any information, we have a website and you can come to our table. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, yes. Hello. I'm seeing some very, very friendly friends, faces over here.
Hello, my name is Donna, and I'm the event coordinator for the Terminal Islanders Club. And I just wanted to announce that we're having our annual picnic. It's upcoming. This year it's on June 9th, and there's something for everybody. It's a lot of fun. If you want to see Terminal Islanders at play, you should join us. We have mochi maki. If you've never seen that, we throw mochi, and people kill each other to catch it. We have children's games, entertainment, and we have items for sale. We have copy codes, t-shirts, things like that. There's also a lot of photos that we display if you're really interested in knowing more and seeing more of the photographical evidence. And we also honor dance. So I just want to let you know you are all invited and you can become members if you want to at that time.
Thank you, everyone. I think we should probably end it here. Hang around, right? People can talk story more. Look, you know Donna's from the Terminal Islanders, you know June is, so you could grab them and get more information. And I'm now going to bring up Stephanie to close out the program.
So before we close, I'd just like to thank our guest speakers again. June Miyamoto Donovan, Michael Enomoto, David Metzler, and Naomi Hirahara. We'd also like to give special thanks to Stacy Ryona Hashimoto for her resources in helping and making today's program possible. Thank you to Timothy Toyama for his generous donation to this program, and thank you again to our sponsors, the George and Sakae Aratani Community Advancement Research Endowment and the UCLA Asian American Studies Center. And I'd like to express our sincere gratitude to our Day of Remembrance Committee. So Luis Hashimoto, Michelle Harano, Hideki Obayashi, Alvin Takamori, Timothy Toyama, and Eileen Yoshimura for their hard work and dedication. So it takes many months of planning to put on this program, and we would really appreciate everyone's feedback. There is a short survey form included at each of your seats, so if you can fill that out and then drop it off at our info table. And then you can also use it to enter into a raffle to win a signed book, Naomi's book, Terminal Island Lost Communities of Los Angeles Harbor. And also visit our info table for more information on our upcoming events. Visit our community supporter tables in the back. Grab some food, and thank you all very much for joining us today. Thank you so much.